Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Let me tell you a story that began with the quietest moment of my life and ended with a silence she'll never forget. The music wasn't even loud when I walked in. That's what struck me first. You expect music to be pounding at a party, but this one was elegant, controlled. People in clean outfits, holding drinks that cost more than I usually spend on a week of groceries. And then there was her, my wife, in that green dress she said she hated. The one I begged her to wear on our anniversary last year. That night, she told me it made her feel like someone else's fantasy. But here she was, wearing it for someone else anyway. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared. He was holding her hand like it belonged there, stroking the inside of her wrist with his thumb while she threw her head back laughing. Like she forgot I existed. Like we never happened. The worst part? She looked happy. Not guilty. Not nervous. Happy. And me? I was standing 5 feet away. She hadn't even noticed. People brushed past me like I was part of the decor. I don't blame them. I was frozen, not in shock, but in recognition. I'd seen this movie before, only the villain was always a stranger. Now it was my wife. She leaned in close, whispered something. He laughed and kissed her. And I swear to God, she smiled in that smug way. The same smile she gave me when I once dropped my ice cream in a parking lot. Condescending. Dismissive. The kind of smile that says, "You're too soft to do anything about this." So I left. No shouting. No confrontation. No messy scene to clean up later. I walked right past the valet who offered me water. I didn't say a word. I just got in my car, closed the door, and let the silence swallow me. And for a few minutes, I did exactly what she expected. I cried. But here's the part she never saw coming. I stopped crying halfway home and started planning. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, still wearing the same shirt she'd ironed that morning. The one she said made me look put together. What a joke. I felt like a broken lawn chair, crumpled, cheap, forgotten on the side of someone else's summer memory. My phone buzzed. A message from her. Just one word. Home. I didn't reply. I watched the screen fade back to black and let the silence press in. I thought if I stayed still long enough, the house would tell me what to do. That's when I realized I'd spent years preparing for the wrong kind of storm. I thought heartbreak would feel loud. Dishes thrown, doors slammed, yelling matches. But no, it was quiet, surgical. Her betrayal didn't scream. It hummed, like static behind every word she'd said for months. Now I could finally hear it. She came home late, said something about traffic. I watched her pretend everything was fine. She even leaned over and kissed my forehead like I was some fragile, sick thing she didn't want to wake. I just stared at the wall. She didn't ask me why I was quiet. Of course she didn't. She assumed I was sulking. Assumed I was too spineless to bring up what I saw. And in that assumption, she gave me more power than she ever knew. The next morning, I started documenting. I'm not tech-savvy, but I figured out how to mirror her phone to an old tablet. I know it sounds crazy, but it wasn't hard. She never suspected I'd care enough to learn. I watched every message, every emoji, every "miss you already" typed from the other side of our bed. Turns out the guy from the party wasn't some random fling. His name was Clay. I had never heard of him, but she had. Oh, she really had. They had a system, new email addresses, a shared notes app with hotel info, a stupid nickname she gave him, Jaybird. What the hell kind of name is that? And yet, there it was, tucked between grocery lists and carpool reminders. She'd been organizing her affair with the same precision she used to plan our anniversary dinners. Color-coded, pinned, starred. And somehow I didn't scream. I didn't smash her phone. I just kept reading, logging, quietly building a case like the saddest private investigator in history. But the worst thing I found wasn't the photos. It wasn't even the messages about me, the ones where she called me boring, predictable, the kind of guy who still believes in forever. No, the worst thing was a sentence I'll never forget. She wrote to him, "He won't do anything. He never does." And she was right. I never used to do anything. Until now. 3 days later, she asked me if I wanted to do something for her birthday. It was 2 weeks away, but she was already planning it, like she expected me to pretend nothing was wrong. That's the thing about people who lie often. They start assuming everyone else is lying too. She probably thought I'd shove the truth somewhere deep inside and carry on like the loyal little husband she'd always counted on. And I would've. I really would've. But that text, he won't do anything, flipped a switch I didn't even know I had. So I said yes. Of course I did. I told her I'd handle everything. I'd make it special. Her eyes lit up like I was some golden retriever learning a new trick. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You're the best." I smiled back, but in my head, I was counting the days. I didn't need grand revenge. I wasn't looking for fire or scandal. I just wanted her to feel that cold emptiness I felt standing in the doorway at that party. Invisible, irrelevant, completely erased from the picture. I wanted her to see the man she thought she broke. Building something in the shadows. I started with the guest list. I told her it would be a small dinner party at our place. Just her closest friends. But quietly, I reached out to one person she never expected. Clay's wife. Her name was Evelyn. I'd found her name in a shared rideshare receipt. Sloppy. Careless. But helpful. I messaged her through a dummy social account and asked if she had time to talk about something important. She replied in under 3 minutes. She'd seen signs. Of course she had. That's the thing about betrayal, it leaves crumbs. And those of us being cheated on? We stopped sweeping eventually. We met for coffee. She was colder than I expected. No tears. No gasps. Just a polite nod when I showed her the screenshots. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me something worse. A photo of Clay and my wife together at a hotel lounge from 3 months ago. Arms around each other. Her head on his shoulder. They weren't hiding. They didn't care. We were nothing but safety nets to them. Furniture. That's when I knew Evelyn wasn't just angry. She wanted in. So we planned the party together. I sent out fancy digital invites. I ordered decorations, candles, her favorite wine. I even picked out a cake, triple-layered vanilla bean, with gold lettering that read to new chapters. It was a lie, of course. There were no new chapters. Just the final pages of a book she thought would never end. She still had no idea. She came home from work glowing. She called me sweetheart again. She even left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, like a silent dare, as if she wanted me to see and still say nothing. And maybe a few months ago I would've. But now, I just nodded along, stirring the pasta while she hummed to herself, rehearsing whatever lie she'd use to disappear for a few hours the next day. She didn't know Evelyn was coming. She didn't know what I'd printed and sealed in those little envelopes under each guest's nameplate. She didn't know the cake wasn't the only surprise waiting for her that night. But she would. The night of the party, the house looked perfect, warm lighting, jazz humming low in the background, wine glasses polished to a sheen, and a dining table set like something out of a magazine. She walked in wearing a sleek black dress and those fake diamond earrings I gave her back when we couldn't afford anything better. She used to love them because they meant something. Or at least that's what she told me years ago. Now, they just felt like props in her little play. But she looked stunning. That was the worst part. She looked like the woman I married. Not the one who'd spent the last 6 months laughing into another man's neck. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I'd remembered the wine. I told her I did. In fact, I made sure to get the exact bottle she always claimed Clay loved. She once mentioned it in a text she thought I'd never see. That's how subtle I wanted this night to be. No fire, no screaming. Just layers of tension so thin you could cut them with the wrong glance. Guests arrived right on time. Her friends. The ones who always smiled too hard and called our marriage cute. Evelyn showed up exactly 18 minutes after the party started. In a dark navy suit, hair pinned back, eyes locked on my wife the second she stepped inside. They'd never met before, at least not knowingly. But the second their eyes met, something shifted in the air. It was subtle. A hesitation in my wife's smile. A flicker of confusion in her eyes. But she moved on quickly, offering wine like nothing was wrong. Dinner was painfully polite. My wife talked about her new project at work. Someone brought up weekend plans. I played along like the faithful husband, pouring drinks and making quiet jokes that made the table laugh. Evelyn sat at the far end, sipping her wine slowly, watching my wife with the precision of someone preparing to break glass. Then came dessert. I stood up, tapped my glass and said, "Before we cut the cake, I just want to say something." My wife smiled, no, beamed, thinking I was about to make some sappy toast. But instead, I reached under the table and pulled out a small stack of cream-colored envelopes. "I put together something personal for each of you," I said. "A little thank you for being here tonight." I handed them out one by one, deliberately skipping over my wife until the end. Inside each envelope, a single printed screenshot, one text, one image, one undeniable piece of evidence. Nothing excessive, nothing vengeful, just enough to plant a seed in every person's mind. Her coworkers, her best friend, even her sister, all of them now held a piece of the truth she thought she buried so deep. As the envelopes opened, the air turned heavy. Conversation stopped. You could hear the jazz track skipping softly in the background. My wife laughed awkwardly and asked, "What is this?" But her voice cracked halfway through. I handed her the last envelope. For a moment, she just stared at it, like she already knew what it contained. When she finally opened it, she didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just folded the paper slowly and placed it back inside. Then she stood up, knocking over her untouched wine. "I need to use the restroom," she said, her voice thin. She disappeared down the hallway, heels clicking like a countdown. Evelyn leaned in slightly, eyes still on the hallway, and whispered to me without turning her head, "She's going to panic." And I whispered back, "She already is." She didn't come out for 11 minutes. Not that I was counting, except I was. Every second that passed stretched like fishing wire across the room. No one moved. No one said a word. Evelyn just sat there, cool as ever, tracing her finger along the rim of her wine glass like this was the climax of a movie she'd already seen. My wife's best friend Dana glanced at her envelope again, then at me. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. But she didn't speak either. The truth had finally outpaced her denial. I walked to the hallway slowly, not to chase her but to make a point. I stood outside the bathroom door and listened, not crying, no footsteps pacing, just silence, like she'd pressed pause on the whole universe and was frantically trying to rewrite the script inside her head. I knocked once, gently, no answer. "She's not coming out until everyone's gone," Evelyn called from the dining room, loud enough for the rest of the guests to hear. "Let her stew in it." She was right. My wife had always been the type to control the narrative. But now she was trapped in a moment she didn't write. The birthday girl, hiding in the bathroom while her husband handed out her betrayal like party favors. I gave her 5 more minutes, then I walked back to the table, grabbed a bottle of wine, and poured myself the biggest glass I'd ever had in my life. "All right?" I said, lifting it in the air. "To new beginnings." A few people chuckled nervously. Others just nodded, still clutching the evidence in their hands like it might disappear if they blinked. That was the thing I hadn't expected. No one defended her. No one asked if it was a mistake or begged me to keep things private. I think they all knew in some way. Or maybe they didn't care. Maybe people are just drawn to clean endings, even if they come from dirty stories. Eventually, people started leaving, one by one, pretending they had early mornings or long drives, until only Evelyn remained. She stood at the table, gathering her purse, and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You did it," she said quietly. "You made her feel the way we've been feeling." I nodded, but it didn't feel like a victory. Just a slow exhale I'd been holding in for too long. Evelyn walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. "She's not the kind of woman who breaks quickly," she added. "She'll twist this around if you let her. Be ready." And then she was gone. The house was silent again. Birthday balloons floated aimlessly in the corners. The cake remained untouched. I walked back down the hallway and sat on the floor outside the bathroom door. I didn't say anything, didn't ask if she was okay. I just sat there, sipping wine, letting the weight of everything crash down between us. When the door finally opened, She didn't look at me. Her makeup was gone, washed away. Her hands were trembling slightly, but her face, blank, cold, calculating. "You did all this just to humiliate me?" she said. I wanted to laugh. Humiliate her? After what she'd done. But I didn't. I just stood up and said, "No, this was just the opening act." And the look in her eyes, that flicker of fear, mixed with the realization that she didn't know what came next. That was the first honest thing I'd seen from her in months. The next morning, I expected silence. I thought she'd stay in bed, or pretend to be sick, or at least avoid me. But instead, she made coffee, like it was any other Thursday. She placed a mug on the counter in front of me and said, "You didn't have to involve everyone." Her tone wasn't sad. It was sharp, measured, not regret, strategy, like she was already mapping her way out. I didn't touch the coffee. I didn't trust anything she handed me anymore. Not after the things she'd handed over to someone else behind my back. She stood there waiting, arms crossed like I was supposed to apologize for exposing her. I just stared at her, watching the cracks deepen in her perfectly polished mask. "Do you want a divorce?" she finally asked. The question didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a business proposal. I shrugged. "Do you?" She didn't answer right away. She picked at her thumbnail, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times, but now it felt like a glitch in her programming. The confident, smirking version of her from the party was gone. Now she looked like someone walking through fog, unsure of which way the cliff was. "I just think we should be smart," she said eventually. "We don't need to burn everything down over a mistake." I laughed. I actually laughed, which startled her. "A mistake," I repeated. "You built an entire relationship with him. You used me like a cover story." Her lips pressed together. "I'm not denying it, but I'm not the only one who played a role in this. You were emotionally distant. You pulled away months before anything happened." There it was, the classic pivot. Turn the blade around. Make me feel like maybe I'd handed it to her. I was supposed to feel guilty, maybe even agree, but instead I said nothing. I walked to the hallway closet, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the table. Inside, a full financial breakdown. Passwords changed. Bank accounts split. My exit plan drafted, documented, and signed where it needed to be. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about control. About taking back what I let her corrode in silence for too long. Her eyes scanned the pages. The longer she read, the more her breath started to catch. I could tell she was doing the math, realizing how far ahead I was. I'd already spoken to a lawyer, already moved some of my belongings. She hadn't even noticed. "This is serious," she said, softer now. I nodded. So was I. She tried to play the sympathy card next. Told me about how hard things had been for her, how lonely she felt, how Clay wasn't even what she wanted, just something that happened, a distraction. I let her talk, because that's what manipulators hate the most, the silence that doesn't give them feedback. No anger, no argument, just calm, suffocating stillness. Then, right before she left for work, she turned back and asked, "Are you going to tell everyone everything?" I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "I already told myself. That's enough." That night, she didn't come home. No call, no message, just an empty pillow beside mine. And for once, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. 2 days passed. No sign of her. I didn't call, didn't text. I figured she was with him, licking her wounds, building a new version of the story where she was the victim and I was the villain. She was good at that, rewriting scenes in her head until they made her look fragile. Misunderstood. I imagined her sitting on some couch, telling Clay that I was emotionally abusive or controlling, whatever made her feel clean again. But then, on the third night, she came back. Not quietly. She slammed the front door, like I was the one who disappeared. She marched into the living room with mascara smeared under her eyes and threw her purse onto the floor like she wanted me to ask where she'd been. I didn't. "I can't believe what you're doing," she said. Her voice cracked, not with sadness, but frustration. "You're ruining my life." I didn't even look up from the paperwork in front of me. I'm just documenting it. She scoffed and paced in front of me like she was rehearsing a monologue. Clay dumped me. His wife showed up at his office. She brought the screenshots. You've turned everyone against me. That almost made me smile. Almost. People should know the truth, I said calmly. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. She stopped pacing, stared at me, and then, in the softest, most calculated voice she could manage, she said, I'm pregnant. It landed like a bomb in the room. I looked up slowly. She wasn't crying. Her hands weren't shaking. She just stood there watching my face like a hawk, waiting for me to react, to break, to stammer, to ask if it was mine. But I didn't give her that. I leaned back in my chair and studied her, like a puzzle missing one crucial piece. Interesting, I said. You think I'd lie about this? She snapped. I think you'd lie about anything if it gave you the upper hand, I replied. She flinched like I'd hit her, and for a split second, I saw the truth on her face. Not sadness, but fear. She hadn't expected me to be this calm, this composed. She thought I'd still be the man who begged for scraps of her affection. But that man was gone, buried under months of screenshots and sleepless nights. If you're pregnant, I said, we'll get a paternity test. If it's mine, we'll figure it out. If it's not, I hope Clay's new apartment has a nursery. That broke her. She turned away, hands in her hair, pacing again like she couldn't sit with her own words. You're cold, she hissed. You're not the man I married. No, I said. I'm not. I'm the man you created. She left again that night, but not before slamming the bedroom door hard enough to rattle a picture frame off the wall. I didn't bother picking it up. I just stared at the empty hallway where she used to say goodnight. And I waited, because if that lie didn't work, I knew she'd come back with a worse one. She didn't return the next day, or the one after that. But the rumors did. I didn't start them, I didn't have to. When people saw her disappear after the party, after the envelopes, after the pregnancy announcement, they connected the dots. Or maybe they stopped trying to connect them at all. They just moved on. And that's what truly killed her narrative. Not outrage, but indifference. She texted me a few times. First to ask if we could talk. Then to accuse me of ruining her reputation. And finally, almost pathetically, to ask if I still loved her. I didn't respond. Not once. Silence was the only reply I had left. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I was done feeding a version of myself to someone who never deserved it. Weeks passed. I finalized the paperwork. I moved into a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but peaceful. I slept better there in one night than I had in a year. No more phones face down. No more fake smiles over cold dinners. Just quiet. Honest quiet. Then one afternoon, I ran into Evelyn at the grocery store. She looked lighter, happier. She smiled at me. A real smile, the kind that doesn't ask for anything. She said, "You look like someone who finally exhaled." And I had. The last thing I heard about my ex-wife was that she tried to tell her friends I'd set her up. But no one bit. People don't rally behind someone who made her husband host a dinner just to expose her cheating. That kind of twist writes itself and not in her favor. And as for the baby, there never was one. No test. No doctor visit. Just another performance. Another tool she tried to use to trap me into staying. But I was already gone. And here's the twist I didn't expect. I'm okay. I thought this would destroy me, but it didn't. I didn't get revenge. I didn't burn it all down. I just told the truth and walked away. And somehow that hurt her more than anything else I could have done. So now I ask you, Reddit Confessions community, what part of this story shocked you the most? The envelopes? The fake pregnancy? Or the fact that sometimes walking away is the most powerful move you can make? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading them. And if you're still here, thanks for listening. It means more than you know. You're on the Reddit Confessions channel, and remember, some truths don't need revenge. They just need to be seen.